Welcome everyone. In this presentation, we are going to look at taste and smell. We're going to look at the organs that we use for these two functions. So first, we look at the tongue, which we use for taste. The tongue is muscular. This is to say it has muscle that can allow it to move. Okay, allow it to move in different directions. And we use the tongue for, of course, in eating, in swallowing, and also in speaking. Okay, so that means that the tongue is an important organ. Okay, if you look at the tongue, you see that there's some protrusions that you can see on the tongue, on the surface of the tongue. These protrusions are what we call the papillae. Okay, the papillae, and then the papillae contain the taste buds. The taste buds are the ones that differentiate the different types of tastes that humans can detect. So the taste buds are basically sensory organs within the papillae of the tongue. So they contain receptor cells that respond to particular stimuli. There is always a notion that the different parts of the tongue can detect a particular type of tastes. Okay. However, research that we have indicates that that is not exactly the case. The issue is that we have the different parts of the tongue can detect the different tastes, but other parts are more sensitive to other tastes compared to the other. Okay, it's more specific to particular tastes compared to the other tastes. So the tastes that we actually have are about 5. Sweet, the one that is associated with sugary foods. Sour, for example, acidic substances. Lemon, for example. Salty, as the salty taste, like a salt. And then bitterness. Okay, these are, for example, most drugs are bitter. But this is not to say that all drugs are actually bitter. Okay, and then the last type of taste, the umami, the last taste, which is like a savory or meaty taste. Okay, so you can see the image that shows the different parts of the tongue and what they are most sensitive to. Okay, so sweetness, you can see sweetness, the areas of sweetness more towards the tip. Okay, and then sour more towards the side. Okay, salty more towards the end here, and then bitter more towards the edges this side. Okay. So this is basically to emphasize the point that the different parts of the mouth of the tongue have different levels of sensitivity to different tastes. But it's not to say that each part is strictly specific for a particular taste. So how do we distinguish between the different tastes? Okay, what happens is that the particles that are emanating from, let us say, food, they get into contact with the receptor cells in the taste buds. Okay, so when you eat food, this food has particles or molecules that get into contact with the receptor cells of the tongue within the taste buds. Okay, the tongue. So these molecules actually bind to these receptors. Okay, and then a series of reactions will happen, and electrical impulses or electrical signals will be sent to the brain through the cranial nerves for interpretation. Okay, so then the brain will internalize and say this, and you will get that perception of whether it is something sweet or bitter. Okay, so the tongue, apart from being used for detecting the taste of the food, it can be used for mixing the food with saliva. It can also detect the temperature, texture, and spiciness of the food. This, of course, allows you to enjoy the food much more better. Okay, so the tongue is an important organ also for speaking and articulation. We look at the nose. The nose is used for smell. Okay, so what happens is that the nose, in the upper part of the nose, we have cells that can detect smell. Okay, that can detect smell. We call them chemoreceptors. They are found on the upper nasal cavity, just as you can see in this image here. Okay, so how do we get to know the smell? We get to know the smell when the air that we breathe in contains the odor particles from whatever object or substance that we have. And then when these odor particles enter into our nostrils, in the nasal cavity, we have cells that can perceive. We have chemoreceptors that can perceive these molecules, and then a series of reactions will happen that will result into electrical impulses that will be sent to the brain, okay, for interpretation. Okay, and then the brain will give us the sense of the nature of the smell that we are experiencing. So that's the session we have had on the tongue and the nose. Thank you.